So welcome back to the At Homeish podcast, creating spaces where we belong. It gives me great pleasure to say, back by popular demand. I can't even say how many people came up to me to like, dude, you had all these episodes going. I was waiting to hear more. And then like, I hadn't heard about a new episode. Did I miss it? Is it somewhere else? Did you like lose a contract with Audible or Spotify or somebody? Like, who'd you piss off today? And I'm like, I didn't. It's like, I've just been busy, you know? And I tend to avoid the word busy. I prefer to say abundantly productive, because busy sometimes has that negative connotation to it. But if I want to be honest, you know, thinking about some of the, dare I say, praise and support that I received during season 1, it kind of like triggered my perfectionism. And I was sitting there thinking about, okay, well, season 2 has to be better. You know, season 2, who am I going to get in for a guest? I got to have people that are higher than senators and mayors and the police chief and Bill and Aaron. Got to shout them out because they are rock stars in Snohomish. But it's like, well, hey, just chill for a second. You know, it doesn't have to be this perfect thing. It doesn't have to be this thing that's like, oh, it's so amazing what we brought in. It's about being real. And even in the tagline, don't be ashamed of your story. It will inspire others. I really want to take some time to just say, we're back and we got some great people lined up to share their stories. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our guest for today to introduce himself and just let us know a little bit more about who he is.
Well, thank you, Will. My name is Seth Newsome. I'm no politician, sheriff, but I am a member at large in the Snohomish County area. I'd like to think that today that I'm a good man, that I show up for my neighbors. And, you know, meeting you, Will, in the last year or so, seeing you at functions for the people, by the people, I kind of knew when I kind of looked at you and you looked at me and we didn't know anybody, or at least I didn't know you, and kind of watch you from the social media aspect and seeing you at functions. And I can't thank you enough for an opportunity to get scared and push through the fear, because I know I'm probably right where I need to be. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, I so appreciate you being here. And I think you hit the nail on the head, because with all the events that I was at over the course of the past year, you're right there too. And so I'm like, this is somebody I need to know. And I remember specifically a labor event that I went to, and like you came up and like so charismatically introduced yourself, welcomed me, embraced me. And I'm like, okay, like who this dude? You know? I mean, it was like we knew each other, and there was just this comfort, this familiarity. And I'm like, all right, this is definitely a story that I want to know more about, because this was back in early 2000s after my first divorce. I have a couple. We won't talk about that right now. But after my first divorce, I was a person who tended to bury my emotions, right? And I remember hanging out with some of my friends in Tacoma, 48th Street Pub and Grill, and we kind of took over the jukebox, right?
Fair enough.
And we were playing all types of like classic music. And I remember playing with a little help from my friends. And as I looked around with my friends that day, man, the tears just came up, and I couldn't hold it back, right? I remember there was a guy sitting at the bar, big dude, handlebar mustache, got his biker's vest on. And I'm like, that's like a tough guy. And I'm over here bawling my eyes out. And I was like, wow, like, okay, let me suck it up. Let me man up. Let me, be tough, be strong. And then one of the next songs we played is Why Can't We Be Friends? And we were just dancing around the bar, being silly. And I made eye contact with him. I'm like, why can't we be friends? And he looks at me and he's singing along with me. And he comes up and he hugs me and starts dancing with me. I'm like, yo,
incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I remember, like, after it was done, he looks at me and he says, any man that is vulnerable enough to let go like that in public, that's a man's man right there. And so I want to let you know, whenever you're in Tacoma, you are welcome here. And I was like, my man, right?
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
And so, similarly, when I first met you, I was like, all right, I don't know this guy. I don't know these people. I'm just, trying to show up and be a part of the community. I felt that same sense of like family and just connection. So I had to have you on.
I appreciate that, Will. Yeah, compliments have never been a strong point of myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know what it's like to not feel welcomed and then to feel welcomed, and I'll choose the latter every time. Yeah, so just kind of going around from event to event to represent labor and what labor stands for, just people in general. It kind of coincides with kind of my story of my upbringing and my overcoming and all the people that helped me get there. And so, yeah, I can't thank you enough for extending that love back. Sometimes I find myself going around trying to give, right? And sometimes it's hard for me to receive, you know? And so again, thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to receive from you that love back, right? And that it's okay that I too can, accept a compliment like the one you just kind of gave me, you know, and not kind of, you did. And so it's just that processing part, right? And I'm sure folks close to me could attest to that. So,
yeah. So you just shared a lot with that little statement there. I do want to know a little bit more about, so what is it that you do? And then we're going to dig into the why you do it.
Okay.
So you mentioned labor. Tell me more.
My father was a union labor. He built roads in Spokane, Washington. My grandpa, same union operator, and they built roads. And I was born in Spokane, Washington, and I never really got to know my father like some folks do. You know, some folks, they get to kind of know their father. So fast forward through life until we move over to Everett, Washington. And, you know, I had a brother that was 8 years my senior. And, man, I just wanted to be just like him, you know. But he's into things that would eventually lead to either, you know, jails, as the saying goes, institution or death. But, man, he made it look like it was a lot of fun, you know. And later on in my life, I found myself finally sober. Once I did, I found myself down at the labor union. And when I showed up there, they didn't ask me, you know, if I was a recovered drug addict or dope fiend or an alcoholic. They didn't ask me if I'd been incarcerated. They just said, am I willing to work?
Right.
And I said, yeah. And they put me to work. And then all the movement and all the stuff and all the training and all the history of, in this case, LIUNA, right? The Labor's International Union of North America. And it's seeing what they have done historically for minorities and social movements and the history behind it and the training. And then not only the work, they provide me a place to go to work as well and earn a living wage. But none of this would be possible if it wasn't for my recovery. And so at the age of 10, I started smoking weed, drinking alcohol, and then snorting crystal meth.
Oh, man.
Yeah, at the age of 10. And I always felt like, Will, that I was not enough or too much, right? Like, you're not like me or I'm just like you. I never really just could be Seth. But I remember when I introduced those mind-altering substances, man, how that made me feel like I had arrived, right? No fear.
Yeah.
No self-centered fear. I'm not better than you. I'm not less than you. Like, I felt like I had arrived. Like, this is what life should be like forever. And that carried on until I was in my 20s. And then when I finally got incarcerated, which, looking back on it, man, them good folks at the Snohomish County Sheriff's, the Washington State Patrol, the Everett PD, them folks saved my life. That's how I see it. You know, not everyone does.
Right, for sure.
And then, so I came home 2010. I went to school at the Everett Community College, studying mechanical engineering, applied science. And then I was going to transfer to their ME degree out there from Wazoo. And then suddenly the thought occurred to me that it sounded like a good idea to go get loaded. Like, that's the baffling future of alcoholism and drug addiction, right? Like, I'm stone cold sober, right? And life is on its trajectory up. Like, I'm studying a good discipline, right? Like, I thought I'd become a mechanical engineer, but then I relapsed, right? And then out comes more of the lies and the more of the hiding, right? And the more the shame and all the promises that I made. And then I finally found myself in a treatment center. 4 guys from a fellowship that I call home today came in and they told their story, and they said that I never ever have to drink or drug another day in my life, no matter how much I want to and I don't want to. And Will, that's where it really got me.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was a slick talk and I ran in the inner city gangs. I was the minority in my community. I thought that I was something special, right? And come to find out is I might be special in my own kind of ways, but I'm no different than you. And I didn't have that outlook, right? I just had this really weird, twisted outlook, Will, where men treat men like dog poo, you know what I mean? But yeah, Will, so they came in, they told their story. They said I never ever have to drink or drug another day in my life, and I believed them. Nothing I had done worked. My hat's off to folks who can have a margarita at dinner, right? And then go home and be a good husband or show up to work the next day.
Right.
You know, not chase the night, right? Like, I'm just not one of them, you know?
Yeah.
So these folks taught me how to be of service, and that when I'm of service, right, no matter what, my life seems to get a little bit better. And what I mean by that is if I give you all my money, Will, I'm broke. But if I give you all of me, my life gets really darn good.
That's
Really
powerful.
darn good, right? And I can't write it down on a 5-year plan that I'm going to talk to the power greater myself or talk to the universe or talk to the people that I'm going to do this, that, and this is what kind of currency you're going to repay me. And it doesn't work like that. It's not like a 9 to 5 where my wage has been negotiated and I show up and do my job and I get paid.
One of the things that I feel like it really resonated with me about what you just said, I remember conversations a while back about just money and how it's like an abstract concept. And so if you're giving wealth in that sense, you might get that back in that same form or some other sort of abstract thing of some sort of similar value. But if we truly value one another and we give of ourselves to each other, then that's the energy that we get back, which is just like worth more than anything that's printed on paper or that's could sit on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and it's tough to share that with new folks. My sponsor and the folks in the fellowship I belong to, they did a really good job with breaking that down into like where a caveman can understand it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I got my GED while incarcerated. Right? I did all my self-taught stuff while incarcerated, right? When you have all that time, right, to sit down and read books and drink water that's wet, right? That's what you do, you know what I mean? And the weights are heavy and the water's wet, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of that stuff. And what I found was when I was sober and when I had some structure in my life, for me, not saying that works for everybody, but for me, I found that those were some of my best years. And so I remember when I first got sober, how I would tell folks that the best years of my living were incarcerated and how that was kind of a crazy thing to say. And that today is no longer true, but they were better than I had been living prior to that. And so as strange as it might sound, where, you know, subject to frisk, my family's subject to, you know, their cars being looked into when they come to visit me, the fact that they got to come visit me in a place where I can't go home with them, right? Of the 5 folks that were closest to me, there's one that's still breathing, but he's mentally not there, right? The other one is moved on to kind of like somewhat, you know, I can't speak for him, and the rest of them are deceased, you know, including my brother. And so my mom felt when I was locked up, right, she felt like she could breathe, right? You know what I mean? And so,
oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, like no more checking whether or not that was me on the high-speed chase, no more checking if that was me that got, you know, hit or crashed a motorcycle or, you know, was a victim of gun violence or something like that. And so always in hindsight, right, Will? Like hindsight.
Right.
I'm not saying that's the answer for everyone, but man, it sure helped me get to a place where I could come home and refocus. But again, suddenly the thought occurred to me that it sounded like a good idea to get loaded, right? They said if I did these things and I helped other folks, right, the chances of me getting loaded are slim. Rarely have we seen a person fail, right? And so rarely means almost never, right? I didn't know that, right? But my sponsor made sure to make sure that I knew exactly what that meant.
Yes.
And so it's been a beautiful thing, right? Like I've got to meet people from all around the world and I've got to meet you, right? Because if I'm doing the things I was doing prior to getting sober and helping others, I would be on the other side of things.
Right.
Hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's kind of like how I aligned with the labor movement as well, right? Because they work a lot of those movements, right? They do a lot of voluntary organizing, right? Getting behind issues that matter, better working conditions, right?
Right.
Healthcare, like, and then if you look even deeper, right, they've always been on that side of the changes that have been, whether it be civil rights, women's rights, immigration rights, and so it just aligned with what I do in the recovery community, that space, and then it aligns with my work. And I thought to myself, this can't be real, right? Sometimes, and you can ask my wife, right? You know, they just line up, right? And it's like I'm not even working. You know, there's that old saying, right? If you find yourself doing something that's not work, it's not really work, or however it goes.
Right.
I didn't think that was possible, but here we are. And that's one of the coolest things, man, is when I get the opportunity to help someone else. And then you kind of sparked a little thought in my mind when I was sitting down, and when you gave me what I'll call a compliment, allowing other people to help me too, you know? And so that's kind of like where my biggest struggle is allowing someone that beautiful moment, right? That opportunity to be of service. So I want to thank you for kind of jarring that thought process on this January 20th on Martin Luther King Day.
Yes.
Right. So,
yeah.
So that's kind of how it aligns, right? So nothing is too much for me in that sense, where like showing up and being present and just being there. I don't know what's going to happen, Will, when I show up to places that you show up to, right? We don't know what's going to happen.
No clue.
Right. And this notion that we do, right, Will, is when we start start to think that we're the directors of the show, this thing we call life. That's a weird place to be. I've been there.
Yeah. But one of the things I guess I appreciate about when we show up, and I feel like I've been working on being better about this, just showing up and being myself, not going in with any necessarily expectations or wanting to control something. And it's just a different vibe because I feel if we walk into spaces thinking that we're going to control it, knowing that there are people there in other types of positions, other mindsets, but no, but it's like, if you just show up like, hey, I'm Will. And it's like, oh, wow, you're here. And again, the energy around you when you come into a room, folks know you there. They see you, and I don't see you necessarily doing anything in that moment per se, but it's about who you are and what you represent, and that resonates through that space. I have to share an experience from this past week because, in previous years, I feel like I've walked into certain rooms and again, feeling like I have to act a certain way or present a certain way. And in this journey in my new role, which I think I mentioned before, but I'm now the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Snohomish County. Yes, the whole county. But previously when I would walk into like a city hall, I didn't necessarily feel like I belonged there. It's like, oh, well, this is where the mayor is or the city council and all these important people in the city. But working here in Snohomish, I have a relationship with the mayor and with people on city council, and City Hall to me has become, it's an important building, but it's just another building in the community, right? And it's there for the community. And I've done working on a tour around the county where I've now met with the mayor of Arlington. I met with the mayor of Edmonds. I'm going to be meeting with several other mayors over the course of time. I met with Cassie Franklin, actually, of Everett before I even started in this role. And again, City Hall has become that place. But I had a colleague of mine, Cindy Goebel. You know Cindy?
I don't.
Oh, with Leadership Snohomish County. But anyway, she reaches out to me and she sends me this flyer and she's like, hey, are you going to this? And I'm like, I look at the flyer. I'm like, I didn't even know that was happening this week. And that's somewhere I've never been or never even thought of myself going. But let me see if there are tickets. And so I go to the website. I look and I find that tickets are still available. And I'm like, all right. Guess who's going to the governor's inaugural ball?
Okay.
Right? And so we roll down to Olympia, and it takes forever to get there in the evening, but we get there and, here we are on the steps of the Capitol building. And I want to say probably for the first time in my life, I walked in that building and it's like, I belong here, and it wasn't about, I didn't have any agenda. Folks were like, well, who do you need to see? Who do you want to talk to? I'm like, no, I'm just here. Like they said, it was a party. I'm going to show up. But it is interesting when we think about the energy that we bring into spaces and what that means as far as what it really means to belong. Because if we're trying to be something different than we are, then how could we really have belonging? Because now we're just trying to fit in or assimilate as opposed to showing up as our authentic selves.
Yeah, 100%. I know that prior to the work that I did with my mentor and I've done with countless other men, which means when I'm doing work with other men that I'm doing work on myself.
Yeah.
Is that my entire life, I always thought that I had to do something to fit in. And my father, he would always say, Seth, you got to do the hardest job. Thumbs up, Dad. You got to earn your keep. Thumbs up, Dad. And I don't think his intention was to have me from one spectrum to the next, right? Because I'm an extremist. I'm going to be one or other, right? The place that I found is this place called neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes folks will, Seth, how come you're not moved or not this way or that way? I said, I've been taught, right? And through discipline to be neutral. That doesn't mean I don't have my views. It doesn't mean I don't act on those views. It's just in the moment, right? To pause and just be like, okay, this is how I'm really freaking feeling, right? But let's think about it. Let's talk with someone about it. But this idea that I'd arrived. So either you were going to dominate me, Will, or I was going to dominate you. And what I mean by that is, right? And so either I felt like I didn't fit in or I felt like I fit right in. And typically when I thought that I fit right in, it was when I was doing the wrong things, right? And the unique thing today is that I haven't lost the ability to say things I don't mean, to behave in ways that's unbecoming of me, my natural state, and be okay with it today. Does that make sense to this process?
It does make sense to me because it's about being true to yourself. One of the things I often talk with people about is with equity and inclusion work, they talk about the importance of having a seat at the table, right? But one of the things that often happens is there are people within an organization that provide the seat at the table, but then once someone gets to the table, now they feel like they just have to say what they feel people want to hear. So now they're not really representing either themselves or the community they were brought in to represent, right? And so what I hear you saying is that you're not feeling that pressure necessarily to have to be something that you're not, that you can come in and be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you for putting that into words that might make sense for everyone else, because in my head, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that I'm enough, the notion that you're enough as is, and I don't have to do anything for anyone, but I get to do something for those who I want to get, right? Like I get to do stuff today for folks. I don't have to fit in. I get to. And that's a great space to be in, right?
For sure.
And so I also understand that I don't know what it's like to be Latino. I don't know what it's like to be African. I don't know what it's like to be whatever. And the reality is I'm okay with that today.
Yeah.
I read somewhere, it was on a sign somewhere, it says, "I'll never know what it's like." And there was a picture of a Caucasian or a white hand and an African American or a black man's hand, right? And and it said, I'll never understand what it's like.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It's okay.
You know? But yeah, I'm incredibly grateful, man, for our county. I'm incredibly grateful. And I too was tasked with, as a new organizer, January 2024, to start attending these chambers and these places where I've only been prosecuted at, right? You know? And it's been a while, but like that, I get that, they got that robe and you got that, escort, from officers. And I remember my first couple of times how it made me, kind of anxiety ridden. And then,
absolutely.
Then I got to know the council members, and I got to know the mayor, and I got to know the commissioners. And now there's just, hey, Seth, hey, Dave, and that's, it's a cool place to be, and, but all the while trying to help individuals that are in our community. That's the primary purpose I have today, is try to help other folks, right? Whatever it looks like. Never hesitate to go to the more sordid places on earth, right? To try to be helpful.
Right. It's a beautiful thing. And I was reflecting back on a quote that you were alluding to earlier. And this is one that, really sticks out with me. If you never want to work a day in your life, find something you enjoy doing.
There it is.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I feel in my work, where people look at me, they're like, oh my God, well, you're doing that DEI work. I'm like, say it all out so people know what it means.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're doing that DEI work. You must be exhausted. You must be tired. I'm like, no, I get to do this. I get to, in the sense of equity, work to understand what it is that people need and work to meet that need. In the regards of inclusion, I want everyone to feel like they belong. I don't want anyone to be in a space and feel like they can't walk into a certain building. Now, if it's somebody's private space, that's different. But it's like,
fair enough, yeah.
Is it okay for someone to come to Snohomish and walk up First Street? Is it okay for someone to go to the Granite Falls Fish Ladder? Is it okay for someone to, go into whatever community and just be able to move around just like anybody else? That's a calling, to be able to do this work. So I feel you on that.
Yeah, it's a good life, man. It is a good life. My first time, strangely enough, outside of the prison system where I felt I belonged, right? Because it sounds like a crazy statement, but I remember I was sitting on this back patio of the kitchen at Monroe, out there at the reformatory or out there at the complex. And I was looking out past the gates and I was asking myself, is society being kept from me, or am I being kept from society? And so we'll fast forward to this idea about being included, right? Like I had thought to myself, like, this is my retirement plan, right? Like I'm just going to do this and I'll just 3 hots in a cot and, and medical. And today, man, through folks like yourself, right? And in the community and folks that rent out their spaces for us folks in recovery and from all things, right? Not just drugs and alcohol and mind-altering substances, from trauma, from this, that, and the other, right? Those spaces, and then the community to back it. So we're just incredibly grateful for the Snohomish County that we get to live in and work in and play in and bring that to it. I like your point where there was a time where I didn't feel welcome, right?
Right.
In life and presumably maybe yourself as well.
Ooh, oh yeah.
And you kind of you sparked it when we met at a gathering, a labor gathering or whatever it was, and where I had welcomed you, and then that's how you met me, right? And so because I know what it feels like, right? Like I try to go out of my way to make sure that, hey man, Oftentimes when we have conventions and gatherings, I'll not sit at the table with all my closest friends.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go and I'll shake the hands of folks I've never met and maybe sit down with them.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, 9 out of 10 times. And then years go by and they say, hey, man, I appreciate that. A year goes by and 6 months goes by and you say the same thing, right? And so I think we're on to something, that idea of giving back.
You could sum up the whole theme of my podcast with that message. Just go and introduce yourself to people you don't know. I think too many times, and I used to hate this when I was a teacher, so I'm calling like all my old teacher friends out. Well, we go to a staff meeting, you sit with your department. It's like, but we always work with our department. We don't get to meet other people from throughout the building if we're all in our own group. So while I was a special ed teacher, I might go sit with the English department one day, or the math department another day, or the social studies department. But it's important that we make our way around and introduce ourselves to people so that nobody's a stranger. You know, I think that's probably the powerful statement right there. If we really want to create spaces of belonging, how do we ensure that nobody's a stranger?
100%.
One of the things that stood out to me, I remember we were talking one time and you had briefly mentioned something about being incarcerated. And I was like, wait, okay. I would love to know more about that. Because one of the things that you often hear in the world of equity and inclusion, not about us, without us, right? And so in part of my role with the county, I oversee the Office of Social Justice. And people are constantly talking about people who are, coming back from being incarcerated and how we can best support them. And I'm like, I've never been there. I don't know that world. And it's like, who do I know that knows that world? Who can I talk to? Do I know people who have been involved in gangs or have been involved in recovery? And that's what I was mentioning outside. I have several people that I've talked to over the past couple months who have gone through some course of recovery. And I absolutely want to have them on as well to share their stories, because you know what? It's not my place to share that story because that's not my journey. And so it's so important to find people to share that journey and engage in conversations about how we can better support our communities.
Yeah, well, so I mentioned earlier about the Snohomish County Sheriffs, the Washington State Patrol, how they had rescued me. Of course, at the time, I didn't feel that way. At the time, I felt like, let me out, right? I'm not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Guilty as heck, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went through that process, and strangely enough, I went to trial 3 times in Snohomish County. I grew up with folks who had different ways of viewing the world. And one of the ways was that if you ever go to jail, you always take everything to the box. The box is referred to as trial, right? Mm-hmm. So take everything to the box, right? Now, these are gang members, folks who probably would do different, man, if they knew different type thing.
Yeah.
Or shown different or healed. Like, I was a sick individual and I did sick things. So I was a drug dealer and a drug user, and I would do things, and there was lines in the sand that I said I would never cross, right? I would never deal with stolen property. I would never be in a stolen car. I would never accept stolen property for goods, right? Like, I thought I was this esteemable drug dealer, right? And I was sick, clearly, and I crossed all those lines, right? And so eventually I got placed in front of the prosecutor and the judge, and so I did 168 months on the installment plan. I would get 5 years. I'd come home in 3.5 with good behavior. Okay. I was pretty much a model inmate or incarcerated individual. Yeah. And I would do education there. I would read, right? I'd get all my vocational classes out of the way, and I'd come home and I thought that drugs and alcohol, that methamphetamines or the homies were the problem. And what I didn't realize, Will, is that I had always been the problem, right? Like, drugs and alcohol never jumped down my throat.
No.
I put them there. Right. So there was something inside of me that says that this is the solution to my problem. And my problem had always been me. So I didn't do any work on myself, right? Education, self-knowledge is not enough, not for me. And so I'd come home for a couple of weeks and I'd be in front of the judge again, and they would sit my young butt down, and then I'd do it again, right? And so 3 times, right? Lost trial 3 times. So my experience in there was I got an education there. My experience in there was I fought fires for the Department of Natural Resources. I saved homes in Eastern Washington fighting fires as an inmate. It was some of the hardest work I'd ever done. I had never worked before in my life.
Right.
I mean, out there in the streets doing the things I was doing wasn't necessarily work. Now, it's exhausting. And today, quite frankly, it's wrong. I know that today, right? It doesn't feel good when I come outside and my car's not there. It doesn't feel good that if, my uncle or my cousin is out in the streets strung out on narcotics now. It doesn't feel good, right? But prison, for me, like, I was in the best shape of my life. I was the clearest I've ever been in my life. Mind you, from the age of 10 till I got arrested, I was loaded every day. I know I'm kind of getting off this idea, but of what it's like to be in prison. How can we support individuals who are coming or re-entering into society? I do serve on the reentry committee. I do go into the county or the prison and the counties. I do go talk about pathways. I do go talk about apprenticeship. I do, talk about different ways to live anytime I can, right? And I think that's important. You know what I mean? I do think it's important when folks reenter, right? That there's obviously wraparound services that are outside of my purview, that are outside of the union's purview. But we do have a pathway to apprenticeship, right? This idea where, you grab them and you say, hey, man, if you're willing to do the work, right? Like it's available to you, right? And I know not every case is going to be the same.
No.
Right? Well, and that's kind of like the baffling part of how do we, for me, it all comes back down to that self-centered fear and healing, right? Like it doesn't sound like a good idea anymore for me to put copious amounts of narcotics in my body.
Yeah, no.
It just doesn't make sense anymore.
No. Right.
Right? That's the craziest part. I'm still Seth John Newsome, born in 1982, right? In Spokane, Washington, right? Sober 9 years, right? It's that work that I got to do. I got to face the facts, right? About myself, things that were objectionable, cast them to one side and adopt a new way, right?
Right. Yeah, this work absolutely always starts with ourselves. Have to take a hard look in the mirror and understand who we are, what's important to us, and what we want out of life.
Will, the men and women that are releasing from incarceration today, tomorrow, whenever, they have a unique ability to be helpful. But if I don't know that I have that qualification to help the next one releasing, maybe because I don't know what's in front of me, if all I know is the same stuff. So I know that before I got into recovery, where I was going to go, back to prison.
Right.
That's all I've ever done.
Right.
Right. And so when someone showed me how to live, right, now it's my responsibility to show somebody else how to live. I'm not responsible for whether or not they act on that, but I am responsible for how I show up for them.
Absolutely. So we need to work to expand people's worldview.
100%. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I really thought that I was an all-American boy. I was never going to stop smoking my weed and drinking my beer and watching my Seahawks. I didn't think a license was necessary because I'm an all-American, right? Like all this delusional, man. I was so delusional, right? And I had to wrap my head around it. And someone just had to help me just like kind of back up and say, dude, you're silly.
Yeah.
Right?
I hear you. That's one of the things I really appreciate about I would say that has come with the role that I'm in now, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me about different opportunities that, I grew up in Georgia, joined the Army, was stationed in Alaska, stationed in Texas, been to Thailand, Philippines, Japan. And I feel like, I have this great, expansive worldview, went to college, got a couple of degrees under my belt. But I remember taking on this opportunity, and I was talking to someone like, okay, well, I know someone in Edmonds because I used to work there. I live in Mukilteo, so I know people there. I've been through Everett. I know people there. And as I'm looking at the whole county, I look up and I'm like, ooh, where I've never been? I've never been to Darrington. Like, wow, like what's out there? I did go past where Oso with the landslide, but I've not been to Darrington. And then I get an email from a guy, and he's like, hey, I'm so glad that you're in this role, and I'm glad to see that you're still doing this work. You may not remember me, but we went to UW-Tacoma together. I'm like, oh, I remember you because I saw the name. He's like, well, I live in Darrington. Like, get out of here. Okay, cool. And so we're working on arranging a time to meet, but I saw that they were having an event in Marysville a couple months ago, right after I started working. I go to that event. The group is called the Glacier Peak Institute. But I go to that event, and at the event, they had people from Connect Casino Road. They had folks there from Project Girl. They had like a couple other organizations. I can't remember all the names. I think Letty was there also, the Latino Education Training Institute. I think that's what it is. I'm sorry if I messed it up. But here are all these folks at this event for the Glacier Peak Institute, and they're, all about getting youth and people out into the wilderness and learning about the mountains and the trails. I'm like, this is a thing. And so when I think about the work I do in equity and inclusion, and sometimes people make the assumptions that, well, nobody cares and nobody's doing this and nobody's getting this exposure. I'm like, these young African-American girls with Project Girl are up in the mountains in Darrington with the Glacier Peak Institute learning about this stuff. It's not that it's not happening. We just need to reach out to people, get connected, and understand that there's so much opportunity out there to expand our worldview.
100% socializing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's it today. You know, it's just different today, right? Like as far as like how we communicate, what we feed our head with, right? What's available at our fingertips, you know, walking around with a device in our hand, right? Like I came home from Department of Corrections and folks had these devices, you know what I mean? Like I'm reading books where I come from, you know what I mean? Like, and I come out and they have these devices and I just thought, holy smokes, right? Like here's this device that has GPS on it and
everything,
and videos and YouTube and all these things that came to fruition while I was away. And I find myself on it when I should be asleep, right? I find myself on it when I should be powwowing with my wife. I find myself on it when we're actually powwowing at a restaurant, but on our phones, right? Like, if that's the case, right? And there are facilities that help people with that. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's some kind of electronics treatment centers.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, why not spread the good? And I think what's cool about spreading the good is, especially if there's a little asterisk on there saying, if this is not how you feel, we know a way out, right? I know a way out. And it's not my way, it's just a way.
Right.
And it's not the only way, right? But it's a way. And it's not abrasive to any cultural, religious, non-religious, whatever it might be, right? And it all comes back to, as you said, just feeling like you belong, right? Feeling like you belong.
That's it.
That's it.
That's what this is all about.
100%.
From the moment we first interacted with each other, I could tell that I could talk with you. We could go back and forth for like a long time. So this is like the first extended conversation of many, and y'all won't get to hear all these. But I really appreciate you coming in today and taking this opportunity to just kind of share some of your world and some of your insights. But here's the tough question of the day. You ready for this one?
No, but you're gonna give it to me.
I'm gonna give it to you. In a previous life, when I was in Alaska in the Army, I used to DJ. Okay. If you had a theme song that played when you walked in the room, what would it be?
Consider Me by Alan Stone.
Oh, okay. And why is that?
I don't know. I was introduced to Alan after I got sober, and I've listened to all of his songs. If you want to feel good, listen to Alan Stone.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. But
Consider Me was obviously about getting married. And if you watch the video, right, it's just, he just makes too much darn sense. He does. He makes so much darn sense.
Okay. I'll have to add some more Alan Stone to my playlist.
If I may add, well, folks in the recovery committee that know me for a while, they call me the Riddler. And the reason why I chose Consider Me is not necessarily because this idea of man and woman marriage, I'm married happily. It's kind of a marriage to the people, right? Outside of the traditional, church and all that jazz. Just kind of like,
oh yeah, I get that.
Like just kind of married to this idea, right, of togetherness. I can't see why we shouldn't be together, but if you ever find out what that might look like, just let me know.
Oh yeah, I'd let you know. Yeah.
All right.
So you passed the test with that toughest question. Now this one might be a little bit easier just based on the tone of our conversation here. I feel like through the course of this conversation that, there's somebody out there that's listening that's like, man, wow, this is really speaking to me. And so like, what are some of the community resources that you feel you could share with someone if they're looking for additional help and support?
Yeah, I can't name them all, but I know I can name the one where I found the help that I needed to get to where I'm at today. And that is caofwa.org, all lowercase, all one word, caofwa.org.
All right. There are absolutely places to go. And as I mentioned earlier, I now work with Snohomish County, and this isn't their podcast, this is mine, but the Human Services Department with Snohomish County, there's a lot of resources there. If you're not sure of where to go, talk with your local officials, because if they don't know, one, they should, sorry.
Agreed.
People are out here to help. And so please don't feel like you have to go through this alone. So the closing things I want to leave you with, as we always try to do, one, remember you're not alone. it's so important that you know yourself, understand what are the things that motivate you, what's important to you, what are those things that might put you back down a road you don't want to be on, because when they show up, you're going to be faced with that tough choice of saying, do I go back here or do I go running the other way? Serve. I think about, what Seth shared with us today. And also back when I was working through college, I was intimidated by college, but through my service with different student organizations, it really helped me to be more connected to the school, connected to people, connected to the community. And, when you have those connections to other people and to the community, it's kind of a motivator to not go back down that bad road. It almost feels like an obligation to show up and let people know that their support means something. Think about the end of Save It Private Ryan, where it's like, earn this. And it's like, ooh, there's all the help that's out there for people. But then finally, expand your worldview. I get that if you're growing up on the block and that's all you see all day, every day, that's what you feel your life is going to be. But I encourage you to, if you're young, with your mom's permission, go to the next block, see what's happening over there. Or, hey, let's drive to this next city. Let's drive out of town. Who's our family members that live somewhere else? Why do they live there? Have that conversation. Expand your worldview so that you understand that what's right, and there's so much more to this world than what's just right in front of you.
100%.
So, Seth, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the podcast. I still keep seeing people wearing the merch. It's so awesome. Still available at Snohomish Apothecary. Still available on the website to order yours. Because, again, if I see you in it, I'm going to go up to you, say hi. This has been a powerful week. I'm so glad we're able to do this on this day, honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and being with unions, because that was a large part of the work.
Absolutely.
Community, that's part of the work. It's a calling. It's a blessing. And I'm blessed to know you, brother.
I don't know what to say. Thank you, Will.
Hey.
I don't know what to say.
Glad I can make you
appreciate
feel
Will.
at home-ish here.
Yeah, that's right. At home-ish.
Yes.
I'm going to get some of that merch.
So I have to say, it's so good to be back. And as always, in closing, when we wise up, we rise up. Peace out.